Rain poured over the small town of Ridgemont that afternoon, turning the dusty parking lot of Molly's diner into a muddy mirror of neon lights. The sound of sizzling bacon, clinking dishes, and low chatter filled the air inside. It was the kind of place where truckers, travelers, and locals came for warmth and coffee that tasted like comfort. At one corner booth, near the window, sat a young girl of about 14. Her name was Lila. She had soft brown hair, a leg brace made of steel, and a wooden crutch leaning against the seat beside her. Her right leg had never fully healed after a childhood accident, one she never talked about. But she smiled through it. Every single day. She was waiting for her mom, Claire, who worked double shifts at a nearby motel and often sent Lila ahead to order their food before her break. Lila loved coming here, not for the food, but for the feeling that, in this warm diner, she could forget how people stared at her when she limped down the street. That afternoon, however, something was different. 3 teenage boys swaggered in, loud, laughing, with their jackets soaked from the rain. Their names were Evan, Brett, and Cody. They were regulars too, but not the good kind. They were the kind who treated kindness like weakness, and laughter like a weapon. They slid into a booth behind Lila, the smell of cigarettes and arrogance following them like shadows. "Hey, look," Brett whispered, elbowing Evan. "It's the tin-leg girl again." Evan smirked. "She here for pity fries?" Lila pretended not to hear. She stared out the window, watching the rain drip off the neon "open" sign. But their laughter grew louder. Cody grabbed a straw and blew a paper wrapper that landed right on her hair. They burst into laughter. Lila's fingers clenched around her glass of water. Her throat tightened. She wanted to ignore them. She always did. But today, it was harder. When she tried to get up to move seats, her crutch slipped slightly on the tile, making her stumble. That made them laugh even more. "Careful there, metal foot," Evan called out mockingly. Brett slapped the table, howling, "She's gonna need new batteries." The waitress, Marge, a kind woman in her 50s, turned from the counter and said sharply, "Boys, that's enough. Leave her alone." They just shrugged. "We're just joking, Marge. Don't get your apron in a twist." Lila sat down again, cheeks burning. She blinked fast, refusing to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. When Marge brought her hot chocolate, the one she always ordered with extra cream, Lila whispered a small, "Thank you." Her voice trembled. But the boys weren't done. They wanted attention. They wanted someone to feel small so they could feel big. Evan got up, pretending to bump into her table. Her drink spilled, chocolate and cream dripping across her sketchbook, the one she carried everywhere. "Oh no," he said sarcastically. "My bad. Didn't see your little robot leg down there." Something inside Lila cracked. She didn't yell. She just looked up at him, those soft, brave brown eyes holding a storm that none of them could see. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. That question hit him harder than any insult could have. For a second, he froze. But Brett, trying to keep the attention, sneered, "Because we can." And then, he did it. He slapped her notebook out of her hands, sending it to the floor, pages scattering like torn feathers. Then, with a twisted grin, he slapped her cheek. Not hard enough to draw blood. But hard enough to silence the whole diner. The sound echoed. Forks stopped clinking. A trucker at the counter turned around, eyes wide. Lila didn't cry. She just stood there, trembling, with her crutch under one arm, her cheek red, and her dignity barely holding on. She looked around the diner, but everyone seemed frozen between anger and fear. The bullies laughed nervously and walked out like cowards pretending to be kings. Marge ran to her. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." Lila nodded, whispering, it's okay. But her voice was hollow. She picked up her notebook, one page after another, her fingers shaking. Then she left quietly, her limp more noticeable than before, disappearing into the rain. The diner remained silent long after she was gone. The cook muttered under his breath, "Those punks, someone ought to teach them a lesson." Marge sighed. Maybe someday, karma will. But none of them knew, karma was already on its way. An hour later. The rain stopped. The neon lights flickered again. And then, the sound came, deep, thunderous, rolling through the distance. Engines. Big ones. Several of them. Every head in the diner turned toward the glass windows. A line of black motorcycles rolled into the parking lot, chrome shining, leather jackets gleaming under the wet streetlight. The engines rumbled like a warning from heaven itself. The first man off the bike was tall, broad, with a beard streaked in silver and a skull emblem on his jacket that read, "The Guardians." Behind him came four more, men and women, rough-looking but calm, the kind that didn't need to shout to be feared. They walked in, boots heavy, faces unreadable. The diner fell silent again. Even the jukebox seemed to stop humming. Marge blinked. Oh my, not seen them since last summer. The leader, Rex Dalton, a former Marine turned biker, looked around the diner. His eyes landed on the counter, where Lila's torn sketchbook still sat, forgotten. He picked it up. Flipped through the pages. Drawings. Beautiful ones. A girl sketching bikes, wings, and words written carefully under one picture. People think I'm weak. I just move slower. Rex's jaw clenched. He looked up at Marge. Whose is this? Marge hesitated. A little girl. Lila. She was here earlier. Some boys, she stopped herself, her eyes filling with regret. They hurt her. The air changed. Rex didn't say a word. He handed the book to one of his riders, then walked toward the door. Outside, the engines came alive again. Through the window, Marge and the customers watched as the bikers pulled out of the lot, in formation, roaring down the street in the same direction Lila had gone. No one said a word. But everyone in that diner knew one thing for sure.